When I lost my job I turned to my family for support. But instead they told me I was lazy and compared me to my cousin who had everything handed to him. I was scrolling through Ashley's Instagram at 2 a.m. when I should have been updating my resume. My wife Sarah was asleep next to me, and there I was, heart racing over some girl from college who just posted a selfie in a hotel room with the caption, "Business trips hit different when love what do." The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been unemployed for 3 months. It started with a like, then a comment, "Looking successful as always." She responded with a heart emoji and suddenly I was 17 again, remembering how she used to laugh at my jokes in AP history. Sarah stirred beside me and I quickly closed the app, but the damage was done. I was already planning my next move. The layoffs came without warning, 23 years at Morrison & Associates, and they handed me a cardboard box and a security like I was some kind of criminal. Budget cuts, they said, nothing personal. But it felt personal when I had to tell Sarah we couldn't afford Emma's dance classes anymore. It felt personal when I had to cancel our anniversary dinner. It felt personal when my 6-year-old daughter asked why daddy was home all the time now. I thought my family would understand. I thought they'd rally around me like families are supposed to do. Instead, I got a lecture from my dad about work ethic, and how my cousin Mike had just bought his 3rd rental property. Never mind that Mike's father-in-law owns half the commercial real estate in town. Never mind that Mike's never worked a day without a safety net, or not trying hard enough, my mother said over Sunday dinner, her roast like it had personally offended her. Mike sends out 50 resumes a day, he networks, he hustles. I wanted to scream that Mike networks at country clubs I can't afford to join, but Sarah squeezed my hand under the table and I swallowed the words like, the rejection emails piled. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Qualifications are impressive but, we'll keep resume on file. Each one felt like a personal on my worth as a man, as a provider, as someone who mattered in this world. That's when Ashley started messaging me directly. "Hey stranger, saw between opportunities coffee." She was in town for work, staying at the Marriott downtown. "Just coffee," I told. "Just 2 old friends catching." Sarah was at her book club anyway. Ashley looked exactly like she did in her photos. Better even. Success had given her this confidence, this glow that made the hotel lobby feel too small. We talked about college, about work, about everything except the ring on my finger that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Always were too good for this small town," she said, her fingers brushing mine across the table. "Remember senior year? We had plans to conquer the world together." I did remember. I remember choosing Sarah instead, choosing stability, choosing what everyone said was the smart choice. 3 hours turned into dinner. Dinner turned into drinks at the hotel bar. Drinks turned into her suggesting we continue the conversation upstairs, where it's quieter. I knew exactly what she meant. I knew exactly what I was about to destroy. And I followed her to the elevator anyway. The hotel room smelled like expensive perfume and poor decisions. Ashley poured from a bottle that probably cost more than my weekly unemployment check, and I drank it like it might wash away the shame already building in my chest. She talked about her job in marketing, her condo in Chicago, her that sparkled with possibility while mine crumbled with each passing day. I always wondered what would have happened if Dee come with me to Northwestern. She said, sitting closer now, her hand on my thigh. "Moo could have had everything, Jake. The whole world was waiting for us." That's when I broke. Not when she started unbuttoning my shirt, but when she painted that picture of it I'd never lived. Where I was successful, wanted, where I mattered. I was so hungry for that feeling, so desperate to be someone other than the failure I'd become, that I forgot about the woman sleeping in our bed at home. I forgot about the little girl who still thought her daddy was a hero. For 37 minutes I pretended I was the man Ashley saw. Successful, desirable, worth something. For 37 minutes I forgot that I was throwing away 13 years of marriage and 6 years of fatherhood for an illusion. The guilt hit before my clothes were back on. Ashley was already scrolling through her phone, probably planning her next conquest, while I stared at my reflection in the hotel bathroom mirror and tried to figure out how to go home. How to look Sarah in the eye. How to tuck Emma into bed with hands that had just betrayed everything I claimed to love. I drove home in silence, practicing lies I'd never have to tell because Sarah was already asleep. I slipped into bed beside my wife and lay awake until dawn, listening to her breathe and knowing I'd crossed a line there was no coming back from. The worst part wasn't the guilt. The worst part was the tiny corner of my mind that was already wondering when Ashley would text me again. Ashley texted the next morning while I was making Emma's breakfast. "Last night was incredible. When can I see again?" Sarah was in the shower, Emma was watching cartoons, and I was standing in my kitchen reading a message that felt like with a lit fuse. I deleted, then I wrote back. "Can" was a mistake, but my thumb hovered over send for 5 full minutes before I deleted that too and wrote, "Tonight," instead. The affair lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks of elaborate lies, of job interviews that were really hotel room meetings, of phone calls I claimed were from potential employers when they were really Ashley planning our next rendezvous. I became fluent in deception in ways that still make me sick to remember. Sarah knew something was wrong. Wives always know. She'd catch me smiling at my phone and ask who I was texting. "Just networking." I'd say the lie rolling off my tongue like I'd been born to it. She'd find me distracted during dinner, lost in fantasies of my other, and I'd blame it on job search stress. She believed me because she loved me. That's what made it so much worse. The worst moment wasn't getting caught. It was Emma's school play. I was supposed to be there front row, filming her sing Tomorrow from Annie. Instead, I was at the Marriott again, telling Ashley about how my family still treated me like a disappointment while she traced patterns on my chest and promised me a job at her company in Chicago. "Just," she whispered. "Start fresh. Deserve so much better than this small town." Part of me wanted to believe her. The part that was tired of seeing pity in Sarah's eyes every time another rejection email came in. The part that was sick of being compared to Golden Boy Mike at every family gathering. I missed Emma solo. When I got home 3 hours late with some story about a job interview running long, she was already in her pajamas clutching the program from her play. "Daddy," I looked for in the audience but I couldn't find anywhere. The disappointment in her 6-year-old voice was a to the gut. Sarah covered for me like she always did. "Daddy had to work, sweetheart, but he's so proud of Bal." She even had her phone out, showing me the video she'd taken. Emma singing her heart out, scanning the audience for a father who was 20 minutes away ruining his family for a woman who saw him as a temporary distraction. That should have been my wake call. Instead, I met Ashley again 2 days later. The beginning of the end came when Ashley's business trip was supposed to end. She was flying back to Chicago, and I thought that would be it. Clean break, no more temptation. I could go back to being the man I was supposed to be, even if I was dying inside from unemployment and family disappointment. But she didn't leave, she extended her stay. I told my boss I found a promising candidate for our satellite office. That candidate is Jake. Come with me, we can make this real. For one insane moment I'd actually considered it. Leaving Sarah, leaving Emma, starting over in Chicago where nobody knew me as the guy who couldn't find work. Where I could be Ashley's success story instead of my family's cautionary tale. The fantasy was so beautiful. That's when I made the stupidest decision of an already catastrophically 6 weeks. I brought Ashley to Murphy's pub on Friday night. Sarah was at her sister's house with Emma, and I thought I could show Ashley off to my friends. Prove to that I was still worth something. Look what I could attract. Look who wanted me. Tommy Walsh was there. Tommy who'd known Sarah since high school. Tommy whose wife Jenny was Sarah's best friend. Tommy took one look at Ashley on my arm and his face went white. He cornered me by the pool table while Ashley was in the bathroom. What they are doing, Jake. Sarah's my wife's best friend. Jenny talks about how worried she is about guys making ends meet. And her here with some other women. I tried to play it off. She's just a friend. Business contact. But Tommy wasn't buying it. He'd seen the way she my neck when she thought nobody was looking. He'd seen me light around her in ways I hadn't around Sarah in months. We're making a mistake, man. Sarah's one of the good ones. Don't throw away what half for whatever this is. But I was already in too deep. Already too invested in the lie that I could be someone different, someone better. I brushed off Tommy's warnings and spent the rest of the night pretending I was Ashley's boyfriend instead of Sarah's husband. Ashley flew back to Chicago the next Monday with promises to call every day and job applications for her company. I her goodbye at the airport like I was the man she thought I was, and drove home to my wife with her lipstick still on my collar. Sarah was waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Emma was at school. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock that had suddenly become the loudest sound in the world. We need to talk, Sarah said, and I knew that my 6 weeks of living a lie were over. The photos were spread across the kitchen table like evidence in a trial. Me and Ashley at Murphy's. Me and Ashley at the hotel restaurant. Me and Ashley kissing in the parking lot of the Marriott. Jenny had taken them on her phone Friday night and wrestled with her conscience all weekend before finally telling Sarah everything. Who is she? Sarah's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. How long has this been going on? And please, for once in these past 6 weeks, tell me the truth. I opened my mouth to lie again. To minimize it, to call it a mistake, to blame my unemployment or my family's disappointment or anything except my own choices. But looking at Sarah's face, at the woman who'd supported me through everything, who'd never once made me feel like the failure everyone else seemed to think I was, the lies died in my throat. Her name is Ashley. We went to college together. It's been 6 weeks. Each word felt like a confession that was damning me to her. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She looked at the pictures again, studying them like she was trying to memorize every detail of her marriage ending. 6 weeks. Emma's play was 3 weeks ago. Missed our daughter's solo for this woman. That's when I realized the true scope of what I'd destroyed. It wasn't just my marriage, it was Emma's trust. Emma, who'd spent weeks practicing her song, who'd looked for her daddy in the audience and couldn't understand why he wasn't there. I'd chosen a hotel room over my daughter's biggest moment, and Sarah knew it. I want out, she said quietly. Pack a bag, go to parents, go to a motel, I don't care. But I want out of this house before Emma gets home from school. I won't have her seeing right now. I started to protest, to beg, to promise I'd end it with Ashley and never see her again. But Sarah held her hand. Chose her over Emma's play, Jake. Chose her over our family for 6 weeks. Don't get to choose us now just because got caught. I'm writing this from a studio apartment above Mike's Pizza that smells like pepperoni and failure. It's been 8 months since Sarah me out, and I'm still not sure how I went from having everything to having nothing so completely. The divorce papers came 3 weeks after I moved out. Sarah wanted full custody, the house, and half my future earnings when I finally found work. I could argue with any of it. How do for custody when daughter looks at like her a stranger? How do claim deserve half the house when spent 6 weeks sneaking around behind wife's back? Emma won't talk to me. Sarah brings her to supervised visits at McDonald's, and she sits across from me ping at her Happy Meal while I try to explain why daddy doesn't live with them anymore. How do tell a 6-year-old that away family because felt sorry for? How do make a child understand that chose 37 minutes of feeling important over 13 years of actually being important? Mommy says have a girlfriend. Emma said during our last visit, not looking from her chicken nuggets. Is that why I didn't come to my play? I wanted to lie. God, how I wanted to lie. To tell her that daddy was working hard to find a job, that it had nothing to do with another woman, that she was still the most important thing in my world. But she'd already learned not to trust me. I could see it in her eyes. Yes, I said instead, and that was the worst mistake daddy ever made. She nodded like she was 40 instead of 6 and asked if she could go back to mommy now. The job search became even worse after the divorce started. Word travels fast in a small town, and apparently being unemployed is forgivable but being a cheater who abandons his family isn't. 3 interviews got cancelled after the hiring managers did some checking around. 2 others ended abruptly when they asked about my current situation, and I had to explain why I was living alone above a pizza shop. Ashley stopped calling after 2 weeks. Turns out her interest in me evaporated once I was actually available. The fantasy of stealing someone else's husband was apparently more appealing than dating a divorced, unemployed man who came with baggage and child support payments. She never offered me that job in Chicago. I don't think there ever was a job. My family's reaction was exactly what I expected and somehow still devastating. My father shook his head and said, Mike would never do something like this to his family. My mother asked what she was supposed to tell people at church. My sister stopped inviting me to family gatherings because her kids shouldn't be around. That kind of influence. The only person who showed me any kindness was my Uncle Bill, who'd been divorced twice himself. Big time, Jake, he said over beers at the one bar in town where I wasn't likely to run into someone from my old. But are not the first man to think with his instead of his brain. Won't be the last either. It wasn't comfort, exactly, but it was acknowledgement that I was still human, still worth talking to, even if I'd made the worst possible choices. The worst part isn't the loneliness though, that's crushing. It's not the financial struggle, though eating ramen for dinner 6 nights a week, while paying child support gets old fast. The worst part is the knowledge that I had everything I wanted, everything that mattered, and I ate away because I couldn't handle being told I wasn't good enough. Sarah was never the one making me feel inadequate. She never compared me to Mike or questioned my work ethic or made me feel like a failure. She was the one person who still believed in me when I'd stopped believing in, and I repaid that faith by betraying her in the most fundamental way possible. I found work eventually. Night security at a warehouse, minimum wage with no benefits, but honest work. I sit in a guard shack for 8 hours reading books and thinking about what I've lost. Sometimes I see Ashley's Instagram posts. She's dating someone new, some investment banker from New York. She posts pictures of fancy restaurants and weekend trips to the Hamptons. I'm not even a memory to her anymore. The supervised visits with Emma continue, but they're getting worse instead of better. She's 7 now, old enough to understand more about why mommy and daddy don't live together anymore. Old enough to be angry instead of just confused. Katie's dad lost his job too, she told me last month, but he didn't get a divorce. He just worked really hard until he found a new one. Why didn't do that? Out of the mouths of, Katie's dad did exactly what I should have done. He put his head down, took the rejections, dealt with his family's disappointment, and kept fighting for his family instead of running away from them into another woman's arms. Sarah started dating someone. I heard about it from Tommy's wife, who probably shouldn't have told me but felt bad about being the one who took those pictures. His name is David, he's a teacher at Emma's school and Emma likes him. That last part is what kills me. My daughter likes her mother's new boyfriend more than she likes her own father. I drove by the house last week. Our house, Sarah's house now. There was a man in the yard playing catch with Emma, teaching her to throw a spiral. She was laughing in a way I hadn't seen in months. This stranger was giving her what I never could, a father who was present, who chose her over everything else, who understood that being a dad is the only job that really matters. I sat in my car at the end of the street and watched them play until the sun went down. Then I drove back to my studio apartment and opened and wondered how many other men are out there right now, scrolling through old girlfriends' social media accounts, thinking the grass is greener somewhere else, not realizing they're about to throw away the only grass that actually matters. The lawyer says the divorce will be final next month. I'll get to see Emma every other weekend if I can prove I'm stable, which apparently means holding down a job for 6 months and passing random tests. I'm clean. Always have been. But they want to make sure I'm not medicating my guilt with anything that might make me an even worse father than I already am. Sometimes I think about writing Ashley a letter, telling her what she cost me, making her understand that her fantasy game destroyed real lives. But that's just more blame shifting. Ashley didn't force me to cheat. She just made it easy and I was weak enough to take the bait. The truth is simpler and uglier than any story I could tell. I had a wife who loved me, a daughter who thought I was a hero, and a chance to through a rough patch like millions of families do every day. Instead I chose 37 minutes of feeling desired over 13 years of being loved. Sarah deserves better. Emma deserves better. And every night when I lie in this narrow bed, listening to the pizza ovens shut down downstairs, I know they're going to get it. David will be the father Emma remembers growing. He'll walk her down the aisle someday while I watch from the 3rd row. If I'm lucky enough to be invited at all. I learned something, that I'm a better man now, that I understand what really matters. But the truth is, if Ashley walked through my door tonight and offered me that fantasy again, I'm not sure I'd be strong enough to say no. And that's the most terrifying truth of all. The unemployment was temporary, the family disappointment would have passed, even the bruised ego would have healed with time and patience. But some mistakes don't give a second chance, and some choices echo through generations. Now I'm the cautionary tale my family tells about what happens when don't appreciate what have. I'm the reason Emma will have trust issues with men. I'm the ghost haunting Sarah's new relationship. The shadow that makes her wonder if David will stay loyal when gets hard. I destroyed everything good for a woman who forgot my name before her plane reached cruising altitude. And I'll spend the rest of my knowing exactly how much that 37 minutes cost. The saddest part, it wasn't even worth it while it was happening.